Hi guys, Inferno here and welcome back to another video, and today we are going to be doing another series review, but we're going to be looking at the complete Season 7, which is John Pertwee's first season. So this is a long season but quite short story season, so we only have Spearhead from Space, the Silurians, Ambassadors of Death, and Inferno, having Spearhead from Space coming at 4 parts, and then these three also coming, all three of the other 4 stories coming in at 7 parts. So let's start. So, looking as this is different to the revival, the series reviews for the classic one's going to be a bit different because obviously it's not got a final end, like a finish point for the show. So it's more of an individual storyline, which is smart. So we're going to just kind of have like a brief look at all of them and then what I'd rate this season. So first off, we have one of my personal favourite Pertwee stories, which is my second favourite Pertwee story, Spearhead from Space. Class story, great introduction to the Doctor, Liz, and sort of like reintroduction to Unit, because we know of Brigadier and stuff and from the not Pertwee, the Troughton era, but it's nice to have like a reintroduction to them, and it's quite funny to see the Brigadier's reaction to the fact that he thinks he knew who the Doctor was, but it turns out this Doctor that he knew from before can change his face, and he doesn't really believe it, but the Doctor seems to sell this idea to the Brigadier, so the Brigadier kind of believes in him. Although I would say the Brigadier doesn't really believe the Doctor properly until about the Silurians, and then he kind of gets properly confirmation in the 3 Doctors when Patrick Troughton returns, and he kind of goes, "Oh right, so yeah, you must be the Doctor," or whatever. Yeah, in this first story, they've got a good dynamic. I like Liz in this. I think Liz is quite good in this. She's a smart companion, which throughout the season, she is very good as a companion because she is quite smart. She can look after herself, which maybe some of the other companions might not be able to do, which is maybe a drawback of them. But yeah, a pretty good, strong opening, and also quite a good Autumn introduction as well. Moving on, we've got the first 7 part of the series, which is the Doctor Who and the Silurians. This is an interesting one. Next we have the Silurians, obviously. Yeah, I think the thing with the Silurians is it's the fact that it's a 7-parter, which is quite a long length. And maybe unlike Inferno, possibly, and like Ambassadors of Death, it doesn't need to be 7 parts. It could be 6 parts, probably could be 5 parts, maybe. Because I think parts 1 to 3, alright, and then parts 6 and 7 are good. But parts 4 and 5 are just pretty weak. This is obviously quite a memorable story because it introduces the Silurians, who reappear in Warriors of the Deep and in the new series in the Hungry Earth and Cold Blood. They also introduce Bessie, the car the Doctor drives around in for the majority of Pertwee's era, and a bit of Tom Baker's beginning of the era, and even Sylvester McCoy gets in it at one point. Also, this is the beginning where he kind of feels like he's coming to terms to his exile, which is quite smart. I think the real reason that I enjoy this story is mainly because it does kind of pose an interesting question in this story, which is, at the end of the story, the Doctor tries to make peace between the Silurians and the people. Humans, but Doctor wants them to make peace and they to coexist, and it's an odd thing because you think, well, the enemy of the story in many respects, actually the Doctor goes, well, no, they are also people from this Earth. They should get the right to the planet as well as you, and that's an interesting concept. And the thing becomes is, well, did the Brigadier make the right or wrong decisions? Because at the end of the story, rightly or wrongly, the Brigadier signs, well, there's nothing we can do. They won't make peace, and then he blows up the Solarian cave where they were, and you think, well, that's a bit odd, but he probably should have done it, but also he probably shouldn't have done it. It depends on what point of view you're at. There's not really a good answer for it. Next, we've got Ambassadors of Death. Now, I love Ambassadors of Death. It's a really good story. I think a good thing about maybe not Spearhead as much, but the good part about Series 7 as a whole is more or less the grando factor of it. The stories feel like a great big story, like a large scale story, and I've always felt that with Ambassadors of Death, especially, there's so many characters, so many pieces, and I do like at the end it does all come together in this one nice puzzle. And so you've kind of been leading there's been little bits of hints, and then you finally got this one big end. However, I do think the one kind of thing which does let it down, which is why, even though it's my favourite Pertwee story, it's not higher in my ranking of just stories in general, is the fact that at the end, the Doctor just kind of goes, right, well, my work's done here, and walks off. I mean, in many respects, as a unit soldier, it does make sense that he'd be like, right, I'm off, and I mean, not as a unit soldier, but as a normal time traveller, the Doctor, especially in Tom Baker's run, he just kind of fixed the problem and then just leaves. But in this, it makes less sense because he is part of unit, so he does technically still have to work as a scientific advisor rather than just going, it's 5 o'clock, I'm going home. But it still works. And last is Inferno. Inferno's obviously a popular one for Pertwee. Pertwee's era. It's a lot of people love this story. I think a lot of people love this story mainly because it does rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel significantly before that. I mean, it's about probably about like 20 years before, maybe more than that. It's probably around 24 or 5. But yeah, it's still a solid story. The writing's good, the direction is amazing. But I think the thing is, people try and put this one on a grandiose, like a big pedestal. It's up here at the tip of stories but then they can, because it's so up here, it means that they kind of don't see the flaws in it, and that's the issue with this story that I have. There are not major details. It's not a whole massive thing, but similar to Ambassadors of Death, there's just one or two things that could be improved, and that is the Primals. The whole idea of the Doctor going to a parallel universe and, you know, just going to a parallel universe and there being, like, the brigade leader being a villainous kind of character, that makes sense, that's smart, but the fact they had to bring the Primals in, it just doesn't feel like they needed to bring the Primals in. It just felt like they needed to shoehorn the Brigadier in the beginning, just so that then it made just making more sense, like in their other timeline, that Brigade Leader would be there, because they had to have the Primals in as like a weird threat for the Brigadier to go, right, unit needs to get involved. When in reality they could have just done it where maybe just Liz and the Doctor went over there as like advisors just to check on it, like one of the people wanted advisors, and the Doctor would obviously be a good advisor, and while he's doing his side project, then he gets sucked in. But obviously in the other timeline, because of the events that happened and it's a prison camp more or less, they got the brigade leader as in, so it's just a coincidence. I think that would work better than having to shoehorn the Brigadier in it, because he doesn't really add much to the story, except from trying to stop the Doctor from stopping the Inferno project from going ahead, because he'd seen in the other world how it goes wrong. So yeah, that's just the look at all of them. As a whole series, I think it's definitely a 10 from Spearhead, a 9 for Solarians, a 10 for Ambassadors of Death, and a 8 for Inferno. So altogether, it's Probably a 9.5 series. Definitely one of my favourite seasons. If I ever go to do a ranking, it will definitely be in my top 5. The main reasons it's good is the fact that Pertwee has such good dynamic with the Brigadier. It's quite a love-hate relationship. The Brigadier and the Doctor don't really seem to get along, yet they always seem to work it out. And it's cool because I think there is times when the relationship does develop, because there's a scene in, I can't remember exactly when it is, but there is a scene in one of the stories, I believe it's with Pertwee, not with Tom Baker, where he says, "Get your men out." Oh, it's in Day of the Daleks. He tells them to get the Sir Reginald Styles and the other people out of the house because he knows it's going to blow up. And rather than the Brigadier questioning him and spending all that time, he just kind of goes, when the Doctor says something, he's usually right and escorts everyone out. In this, he's obviously a bit more sceptical, and I think that growth and development is quite good, and it makes the dynamic quite a lot interesting, like more interesting at least. And yeah, Liz Shaw as a companion is really good in this. I do prefer Jo Grant as a companion as is, but maybe that's just because Liz Shaw didn't get much time to shine. I mean, I believe out of every single companion, even people like Adam, who just literally was in it for 1 or 2 episodes, she was the only companion who hasn't been to another planet, which is quite unfortunate for her. And it's more or less because she was a good companion who knew what the Doctor was saying. She was kind of Romana before Romana, and it was unfortunate that Barry Letts decided that he had to change it, because obviously the audience wouldn't understand what's going on. But yeah, that was just my look at Series 7 as a whole. If you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and watch another video. But yeah, see you.